All right, doing a quick mic check.
Hello, everybody.
How we doing? How we sounding? Thank you, Dee Dee. All right, we'll be back in a few. Sandy's got a new guest this evening. We'd like to welcome Joe to the show.
Coffee is on.
And the stealth drops are gone.
It's Monday, September 30th, and this is your Smart Doll News.
That's like the smoothest that's gone in a long time. And man, am I like, I'm really low.
You're short.
I'm very short tonight. Ugh.
Rock the whole world here, huh?
My cup is in the in the view. Okay. We've now that you've seen my dance, we've got coffee literally launched less than an hour ago, or about an hour ago, and has sold out now.
Yep.
As of a few minutes ago.
Yeah, so it took about, I want to say it took 35, 40 minutes, something like that.
Something like that. So we were talking about that, and stealth drops are gone. A whole big hullabaloo about bots, and we're gonna try and help break down exactly what really happened with the whole bot thing, and you know, with stealth drops being gone, and how to make sure you are staying up to date with all of the Smart Doll releases. So let's get into it. All right. We have, first of all, Smart Doll Divergence in coffee, first coffee Smart Doll, and
offered at 63,900 yen, which is roughly 445 USD. Then, of course, of your fees and stuff on top of that. But because she comes bundled with the medium bust.
Yeah, so we talked about this before. Of course, Danny has. I mean, it's kind of a method to stage and slow sales in the very beginning of this, because we know. Especially, I mean, with any new doll that's popular, but also especially something like a brand new skin tone or new body type, the demand is going to be high in the beginning. So if you are looking for a Coco doll right now, all you're going to see is bundle drops where you're going to be buying the medium bust as well as the standard.
Personally, I think this is a great thing because, for one thing, if he's making the medium bust, and if he puts it out separately, you're gonna get people who are anxious to have their hands get coffee in their hands, right? But they don't want divergence. So then you have people with divergence who want the medium bust and can't get it. So bundled together, you make sure that it goes where it's supposed to go.
Yeah, in general, everyone who gets it, wants it, has an opportunity to get it. Yeah, I mean, I think after that, it also kind of like for people who want the medium bust as well, it means you're probably, depending on how you collect things, but probably you're going to be maybe only shooting for one doll during, the initial release while things are bundled.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I've seen a lot of people on the secondhand market sell their standard bust. Like they pick they pick the one they want and they sell the standard bust. So or the medium.
Sure, I'm sure that will happen as well. But yeah, Divergence is up. Did we get one, Sandy?
We did not.
No.
Not because we don't want coffee. We very much do. It's because we didn't need Divergence.
Yeah. And Beyond is the girl that we're waiting for and have been waiting for a long while for.
Yeah. So we want Beyond in coffee.
Now let's talk a little bit about. There's some questions about her wig. This is the wig that she comes with, which is essentially the long, straight, fairly standard Smart Doll wig. And one of the. I mean, it's also fairly standard on Coco dolls, but one of the wigs that everybody loves on Coco is the twist out wig, which we have here, right?
Yep.
Who do we got here?
This is Coco Future Hair. Yeah, and she's just wearing some CJ clothes with a Elite Doll World top, but I put the twist out wig on her for people who might not know what the twist out wig is.
Got a little something there. So yeah, this wig is a lot more effort than the standard wigs, than most of their wigs.
It's made of a different material. And it's just complicated to use to make. And that's one of the reasons that Beyond has been not available, because that is her wig and it takes a lot of time to make.
And it also the material is coming from, I believe, Australia. So you've got limitations on getting material and then the effort to do it. Danny did specifically recognize that this wig is really great for representation, but unfortunately, it's just not feasible. It probably and launch the coffee, to keep offering that. It would be really slowing down the release of these dolls. Queen Nova collects says I love the twist out wigs, but they're a pain to keep up with. Yeah, maintenance is a little bit tough.
Yeah, she's getting a little fuzzy on the top, actually. Yeah. We don't even do much with this wig. I just put it on, and it's been on our reflection for a long time, and but it still gets a little fuzzy.
So that is, let's see. I think I'm just using a picture here, but
there was the twist out too.
Yeah, I just cut to our doll since we had it. The the Cyber Shell Bittersweet new release as well. For those wondering, we were looking at the bucket of coffee heads that are kind of he's working on. This was the girl that was upside down that we failed to identify.
And I think someone in the chat did say bittersweet, and I was like, no, I don't think so, but we really think it is. We think that first doll in the tray was bittersweet.
It's definitely bittersweet. I mean, you couldn't really see her lashes from the angle, but the eyebrow, everything about this, it's I couldn't remember what bittersweet looked like. But yeah, fantastic. She of course is a cyber doll, so more expensive there as well because of all the markings on the body. This is 98,000 yen. Let's do a quick reload. I'm sure she's still in stock. Gonna be probably a slower seller. I think the cyber bodies in general have slowed down a lot in terms of demand.
Yeah, well, I mean, also, I mean, she's up against coffee.
Well, sure. But yeah. Any surprise about the length of time it took to sell coffee?
I actually thought she'd hang around a little bit longer.
Really?
I did.
You anticipated like lower demand?
Well, I mean, the thing is we can't even really predict because we don't know how many Danny makes.
Well, the only thing we do know is that Danny did say that he was extra prepared. So he did sort of take a bit of a risk because they're not sure how it's going to sell. But I think this is a pretty good turnout for the first doll that is, of course, bundled, so it's more expensive, and there's dolls coming down the pipeline that everyone is gonna want.
Right.
So yeah, we got back on coffee, but yeah, there's Cyber Shell Bittersweet also released today. All right. So now we get to the story of the evening. The rest of this entire talk is going to be pretty much talking about bots and what happened with the stealth drops. So Sandy, you want to give us a rundown? I know we've talked about this before. We talked about it last week. Oh, you'll probably sick of hearing about this, but like, what's the deal with stealth first? Let's start there, right?
Like, basically, why? Like, what was the deal?
What is stealth, and then we can get into like why people liked it, didn't like it,
Well,
etc.
Danny had two ways of making drops. One was to come right out ahead of time and say, "Hey, I'm just dropping this," and he would announce it on Twitter. Moments on available. Divergence is available, and then you could just go to the site and buy it.
And most of the time, like, there was always a feeding frenzy.
Right. And that made a lot of people very anxious or sad or upset because they always missed it because of the time zone or whatever. Other people jumped on it.
You have the anticipation of like, yes, you find out that it's maybe dropping later that night, and then it drops and it sells out while you're in the cart. All sorts of like repeated negative feelings about the experience and the brand going, I can't ever get anything.
So the urgency was making some people upset.
I mean, there was pretty constant complaints from Europeans about things not dropping in their time zone, from people complaining that there's just never enough dolls or not the doll that they want.
Right.
Pretty consistent, complaint.
So for stealth drops, he was just putting them up there. And if you happen to be on the site and you happen to see the doll you wanted, great. And it has led to more stock being available.
Yeah, I mean, provably, things took longer to sell out. And so when he dropped something in the morning, let's take somebody in Europe, when they drop something in the middle of the night for you, the likelihood of that still being there in the morning was much higher. I will say, though, I mean, we had a whole bunch of conversations about this all week long, and even before, in terms of like stealth and the bots and everything. I do want to shout out, that there's some good, like, personal experiences that we probably really didn't express or talk about last week in terms of the impact it had on some people in the opposite direction.
Right.
you have, and I think it, the person that was talking about this in the Discord, did talk about, being neurodivergent and things like that. But the actual level of anxiety was more prolonged and more intense, because instead of being able to ignore it until you see an announcement from Danny that it's coming that day or something, they were every single day, like they were thinking about, I have to check.
Right.
And I think a lot of people were able to be able to let that go and relax and enjoy not having to be concerned about it as much. And some people, it was more intense and worse.
Right. I mean, and the whole thing was kind of, I would say, like, made a little bit easier on the stealth drops, where there were people on Facebook noticing things and putting up screenshots and going, "Hey, if you were looking for this, it is available. I happened to just notice it." The community was kind of stepping in, and doing that.
And to some extent, I mean, even with people, this is where bots sort of start to come into play. And so before we get to what Danny says here about shutting things down and changing, we've been running a bot for ages. There's a lot of different ways you can set up what would be considered a scraping bot, a bot that's just going to load the web page, which means loading all of the HTML, the same thing your browser does when you load the page,
Mm-hmm.
and then parse that, like you would have it look for a particular code to identify like the list of items on the page, and then you do what's called a diff, a comparison between the last thing you saw and this version.
Right.
And that would tell you what's been added, what's been removed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially the basis of any bot that's going to look for product updates. So with stealth going, I don't know how many more people necessarily started setting up their own bots or things like that. We gave access to our very minimally useful bot to our Discord subscribers as I was sort of fiddling it, and I was considering whether or not it's something that we wanted to open up to the whole server. Then we had people like Vegas Starlight, who I think is in the chat, Peter, and who had their bot that they have been using, similar to us, and started putting the notifications out to a Twitter account and making it publicly accessible. So Danny made an announcement basically saying they've had a big spike in bot activities since going stealth.
Right.
And the whole point of stealth, per Danny, was let's get rid of FOMO, let's let people relax.
Right.
And not make such impulse decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And he even did a poll we talked about last week, right? He did.
Yeah, he polled it, and it actually came out like it was pretty even, wasn't? No, it was more like 70% people wanted stealth.
70%, liked stealth. 30% didn't.
And this is only a Twitter poll, but it was something like 400 and some odd votes.
Now you made an interesting point that like the people not on Twitter are probably more likely to like stealth because they're not actively getting the notifications anyway.
So I think the no stealth number would actually be higher if he had asked outside of Twitter, because a lot of the people that complain that that things were disappearing so quickly is people who spend no time on Twitter or don't get Twitter notifications. So and that's why they miss out, because that was where Danny was announcing it, on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I think that the number for stealth would have been way higher, much more popular.
We can make a lot of assumptions. It's hard to know for sure unless you're literally able to ask them. But 400 some odd people. Our subscriber, like what is he? How many followers does he have? I think I literally have he has 5,881. So we'll say, I don't think it was like 450 out of 5881. No, we want the other way around. 58, 5881 divided by, we'll say.
6 in there. Trying to do maths on the fly.
No, I'm my maths are completely broken in my head. I'm not gonna spend more time on this. But you know, typically, I would say that's a reasonably statistically relevant number of respondents, having like something like 400 some odd respondents.
You had it though. You had it right the first time, and it was isn't it like 7.6%?
That seems low to me, but then yeah. So again, that's like who's engaged. Like this is like the engaged people, probably the people who are most likely to be watching the thing. And again, certainly that's not something to say that people, to discount the experience of people who had a worse time with their anxiety and things like that because of stealth. Danny noticed a spike in activity. He says here, these bots seem focused on detecting changes in product availability, leading to a situation that mirrors DDoS attacks. So do you know what a DDoS attack is?
Not. I understand the implications of it, but no. Why don't you define it for me?
So, well, denial of service is something that most people are familiar with. Basically, flooding a service, a website with so much traffic that it overloads it.
Okay.
The first D there is distributed. So typically, this is like you're talking about the way a DDoS attack would be typically done is a bunch of machines that have like personal computers that have malware on them. The person who put the malware on them then engages those computers to run the script that they want to run to access this website, I don't know, 1,000 times a second from thousands of places all over the world.
To break it.
Yeah. So a DDoS attack is a much more dramatic, like crippling thing. Danny talks about this disrupting the ability to make purchases, even in non-release periods, and then having issues with PayPal, having issues with checkout, like rising. And we know he's had issues with this recently and in the past. So this is a situation where, like, these are all things that businesses should be worried about. Did I tell you about the article that I found, Sandy? This is kind of crazy. So this is a sort of a theory that's building.
You did tell me about this, yeah.
A report from 2023. Well, or sure, I should say of 2023 data. From a security company called Imperva, estimates that nearly half, 49.6% of all internet traffic came from bots.
So, like, nearly half of the internet traffic. Like, that's not us using the internet. Mostly other computers are using the computer, using the internet.
Yeah, like, like Twitter, the amount of content posted to social media by bots is huge. Like, now with the advent of large language models with AI, generative AI, you have bots able to spout unique content, like, much more like a human. Not exactly, but
it's scary. It's really scary.
It's scary, but also, like, if you understand what's happening, there's an element here of like big companies really need to deal with this. I also brought up let's see. Nike has to deal with this a lot. They're currently this is August 13th, 2024. They reported a 28% loss in income And while profits are lowering, the amount of traffic from bots is ever increasing. And they even had their sneakers app, the SNKRS app,
Mhm.
designed specifically to level the playing field, to give people
Give people more of a chance to get what they want to get.
Yep.
And bots are using that too.
Yep. 10 to 15% of secret raffle entries are made by bots. So there is this aspect of like bots that actually do things, like pretend to be humans, and like make fake accounts, or I think Danny, I'm sure, getting fake orders. I realize I'm counting one finger over and over again. So they have this element of like like very specifically malicious things, like trying a bajillion credit card numbers on the site with orders until one works.
Right.
Like things that they got from on the internet. The scraping side of thing, again, which I described, of like grabbing
Pulling the
that.
data, tracking the changes, like the way a word processing program can show you like all of your changes that you've made and all the new stuff.
Yeah. That is something where um uh that's something where if enough people if one person's doing it, if one bot is doing it, in order to make it functional for someone looking for updates, it doesn't need to do very much. But maybe more people are doing it. Danny's got a problem though. We know Shopify, at least to some extent. We don't run certainly as high a traffic a store as Danny does,
or have as many products.
Sure. Danny has limited access to what he can do about bots and what he can know about bots. Mm-hmm. So normally for your own custom website, you would use a service like Cloudflare. We actually technically use Cloudflare for applying I believe the Smart Doll Guru domain to our Notion database.
Right.
And so it's you can think of it as sort of like it deals with like connecting domain names to the servers, but it has a lot of functionality also as what's called a CDN, which is a content distribution network. So basically, we're going to make lots of copies of your website all the time so that people in different countries have have less distance to go to connect to your website. And they also have like at the most basic level, or I should say sort of the first entry point, like tools in place to help you deal with this. Shopify gives you no access to these things. So you just get whatever they do automatically in the background. You don't get to see IP addresses or anything like that. And what we do know from what I've researched is Shopify will do things like they should be throttling if one particular computer or one IP address, so something connected from one individual place, is using too much traffic, like is requesting too much too quickly, they can throttle and ban that IP address. So for a home user, if I were to set a script, I don't know what that threshold is, but let's say I decided to make a script that loaded up a website 1,000 times per second. Mm-hmm. And that is more than the threshold for Shopify, they would stop my internet address. So anything connected to our modem would not be able to access that site anymore. Probably all of Shopify.
Just to keep their customers from having their sites broken down.
Yeah. So when we talk about DDoS attacks, that's where we're talking about like distributed attacks. These attacks are either use multiple computers, or you could have bots that actually essentially use a proxy service that gets you a different IP and it rotates. So there's so many ways around this sort of stuff. But if somebody wanted to maliciously attack the server, like that's the kind of thing that they would typically do. Junathorn says, "This is all making me very anxious," which I think is a good representation of our community in general. I get it. We're generally anxious people. So I mean, by all means, like we're digging in deep here. Feel free to bail or take it in chunks. So Danny continues on here. And talks about the fact that they identified several social media accounts that are not only tracking products that are in stock, but also when they sell out, and that the sheer volume of bot activity suggests significant resources are being invested in this effort. Now, what do you interpret that to mean?
That like resellers and stuff are probably have bots running to track it, you know.
Could be, yeah. I mean, and maybe they had a bot that checks his Twitter account, but now they've turned on a bot that's scraping the website more. He mentions a few social media accounts. That's like most likely the one that would easily come to mind would be Vegas Starlight's one, which we'll get to in a second. But he does make a statement here, which isn't. It can't really be true, and I think it's a bit of a misstatement here, which is products. Basically, they're not only tracking when products are in stock; they're tracking when they sell out. All a scraper bot is going to do is on an interval. Ours was every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes, every 1 minute, whatever.
And we were only doing one page.
Yep, but whatever it is, load the page. And look at the differences like I described before. You will then be able to know both what has been released and what has sold out at the exact same time.
Right.
So sharing that with people or remembering it, having it store it in like a little database somewhere that says, okay, this was shown and then here it disappeared, and looking at the difference in time would give you that. So this is I think this is a kind of misunderstanding of, like, I wouldn't say that seeing that level of information coming out of a Twitter account implies extreme traffic, from that bot onto the website.
Okay.
But here's the thing. He says, the sheer volume of bot activity suggests significant resources are being invested in this effort. Danny's not going to share traffic stats with us.
Nope.
He could, I suppose.
He shouldn't, really.
I mean, there's very little reason to. So we have to take this, at face value that he is seeing something that concerns him. Whether that's from a particular bot or not, if the bot is just doing product updates, it shouldn't be enough to really impact the site whatsoever.
But I mean, there's other sites. There's also, like, just to step off briefly, the duplicate sites, the sites that are claiming to sell Smart Doll, they're using bots to grab all that data, right?
Absolutely. So one of the other things that you can do with scraping, again, essentially you're downloading a copy of the page and doing something with that data, right? One of the things you can do is put up a fake website. We have a notice in the description of every one of our videos that you should only go to smartdoll.jp or one of the resellers.
Right.
You're absolutely right. Like, that is a nefarious use of that scraping, that sort of technology. How often they're doing it, I don't know. But sure, they could have a bot that is literally scraping the entire website
probably like every second or something
It could
because
be.
they're trying to they're maintaining the site.
I don't functionally think they need to really update that much. It could have been a one-off thing, like, but you don't know. We have no idea what they're doing.
Mhm.
But those sites will put up, essentially copies of all the products and have like $99.
Yeah.
And then you get unsuspecting people that are like, oh, that's so reasonable.
Yeah. Can you imagine $99 for a smart doll?
Anna K asks, can you make your scraper bot add things to the cart? So, as like, I mean, it's a bot, it's a script, it's an automation. There is code and the usage of like JavaScript and all sorts of things that can actually interact with the page. So you definitely can make a bot that goes beyond just scraping and copying data, but instead loads the page and then adds things to the cart, and actually fills out entire forms.
But the scraper bot just does what it says it is. But you can add scripts to make it do more, or just have a different bot with a different script.
Yep.
That puts things in the cart.
Yep. There's literally just Pieter's in Vegas in the chat. You can literally add things just by clicking a link. Yeah. All a button is on a web page is a hyperlink, just like any page. Mm-hmm. So all of that data is there when they load up the page, and then they can load up the link, which then puts it into the cart, creates a little session for them. Again, the stuff where it's like interacting with the actual like forms on page is not that much more advanced. And these days, with the advent of things like ChatGPT, anybody with maybe some, like, you can get instructions on doing it. I actually, as a test, tried it with ChatGPT and described what I wanted to do. Some of the models, like the latest model preview, says, nah, I can't do that for you. The normal current model for ChatGPT says, oh, here's exactly how you would create a script that does X, Y, and Z. Gives you instructions on how to install it, how to set up a virtual like private server, stuff like that. Now, there's no way, again, for us to know the extent to which Danny's seen those bots. And you know how I was alluding before, like, they don't give you much information. Mm-hmm. What they do give you is essentially the header. It's called, so when you request something from the web page, you say, hey, smartdoll.jp, your browser makes the connection and requests the page that you're loading. Mm-hmm. And it sends a header in that request, which identifies essentially the browser. All Danny's going to see is like something like Mozilla, blah, 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 Chrome. They're all going to look the same.
Yeah.
He might see traffic spikes in like particular countries and things like that. But unfortunately, with Shopify, he doesn't have the ability to really see through what's happening and what's nefarious, what isn't, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I'm probably going to say this a couple times tonight. Long story short, Danny started actually adding dummy pages, and I'm going to come back to that. I do want to get to the fact that because of him like trying to combat bots and realizing the extent to which the traffic is coming in, and kind of re-evaluating the risk to his customers, the decision ultimately that he came to was that he was going to stop doing stealth mode and just go back to doing regular announcements.
But he was actually able to use @SmartDoll for that.
Which on Twitter he's had, Smart Doll and Smart Doll Land. Those are the two Twitter accounts.
Right.
But he finally got Smart Doll.
He got @SmartDoll for Instagram.
Yeah. Which he hasn't had. He's only been Danny Chu on Instagram, I think.
It's like, I've always wanted the actual My Lady Disdain and can't get it.
Yep.
So
functionally, before we kind of dig in any further on this, there is 2 Twitter accounts that you're going to want to follow going forward for drop announcements and things like that. Smart Doll Land, which is what you're used to, is going to have your
behind
the scenes, his like maybe some of the discussion of like polls and things like that, community collaboration, and new launches. Smart Doll is gonna just have like the restocking notification. So he's gonna keep doing them. You get to decide whether you just want to pay attention to like the first time something launches, or you want to pay attention to both, and then you get to decide, you know, you want to follow one, the other, or both. It's up to you. All right.
I'm just looking at some of the chat that says that, you know, being able to create a bot explains why some of us miss out on buying things manually. All those people who have set up bots to buy chaos. I don't think that that is the case.
I don't think there's no proof that much is happening. Quite honestly, let's look at this. I believe a lot of those bots have been running the whole time, and they've increased. Like he's saying, bot traffic has increased. But we also know that stealth, it took a lot longer for most things to sell out. Which means it's not like somebody's out there buying up all the stuff.
No, you have to know that it's going to be there and then decide you want it. And the way you have to have fast fingers, and you have to be prepared. Yeah. You have to have your accounts all ready to go.
I also fundamentally think there's a difference between like a limited edition Nike sneaker and a Smart Doll. I mean, they could be like the world cultural significance of Smart Doll is a lot smaller than something like Nike sneakers.
Right.
And the demand for them is a lot higher.
Or like PS5.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it feels like that to us, right? Because the demand has always been like been expanding much bigger than Danny's been willing to expand his team and keep up with. So it feels like we're always in this race, even though, like, I think we would all be probably fairly surprised at how many actually sell, like, a month if Danny for some reason was silly enough to like
weird reason
show his like sales numbers or something. Like that's not something that's going to happen. But so that's where Danny stands. That brings us to the what is probably the most visible bot to Danny, and likely reference when Danny talks about social media accounts and things like that. This is from Vegas Starlight on Twitter and in Discord and Instagram, and the sort of breakdown of the response to what they have seen happening. So a lot of this is kind of repeating what we've already said, but doesn't cause significant traffic to the website because it doesn't need to. I remember, I don't know if Peter says it in here, but in a conversation with Peter, he said to me that it's like it was once every 5 minutes. Which I even made the mistake of looking at it going, I don't think it's once every 5 minutes. I think it's by the minute, because you would see things like something sold out after 3 minutes, or like after like 39 minutes,
but
or
it's
24 minutes.
Okay, because it's on the 5s.
Every single thing was ended in a 4 or a 9.
Right.
which shows you that they're like, after I looked at it and kind of confirmed, there's 5-minute intervals between all of these
Right.
things. And I think it was also he said it was a rounding error as well. So they're like whatever was causing it to like be, or it was like rounding down to 4 or 9 or something like that. Uh, Danny mentioned that like, hey, I don't know that you can trust like bots out there. Like I'm not running them. They could be um they could be like sending you phishing links to get you to go to an incorrect website.
Right.
Like those websites that are selling dolls for $99.
Right.
So ultimately Vega's point here was connected the Twitter account to his normal Twitter account, and he's in the community. He's active in the community, and people can make that decision. But so is his particular bot like likely to be nefarious? No, you have some ways to to confirm, to establish trust, I guess, right? Let's take a look. We've already talked about this, but the impact on the impact mirroring a DDoS attack. He's saying Cloudflare probably has protection for that, and like I said, limited protection from Shopify with no access to customize.
Right.
PayPal issues. They were starting before this point. Still, there's no. I mean, without literal data, we have to take Danny's word on the increase in both of these since this. So, unless we actually see the data, I kind of got to take Danny at his word that that's what's happening. Just because PayPal issues started before it doesn't mean it didn't get worse when stuff
PayPal
happened.
issues started when something rather big dropped, like one of the new girls or something.
Yeah,
like
I can't
people
remember.
were having a hard time. They're getting the spinning ball.
Vega points to tracking it down on Twitter that August 1st is where Danny first acknowledged PayPal issues. Now he had actually had PayPal turned off for a long time, and then I think turned them back on, or was it the other way around? He had credit card turned off, then PayPal issues caused him to turn credit cards back on.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
So now you can do both. Currently, you can do both. You can still try and do PayPal, or you can do credit card payments.
So we have. I don't know that we can. Again, you can have suspicion that that's not accurate. I have no way to really know for sure. We already addressed this. Tracking when products are sold out doesn't change the interval or the traffic that it's sending. And Danny mentioned dummy products being like there and used for different purposes, but they very definitely like
we noticed it with ours and addressed it, and then he's actually made an explanation about it, that he would cause dummy products to load to try to kind of confuse the bots.
Yep. And it's a like, again, the options that Danny has as a Shopify shop are limited, and they involve like either a whole bunch of extra coding on top of the website, and having to do it within like the like Liquid. I think Shopify Liquid is the name of like their coding stuff. Like you have to do it within that. You could pay for apps to install, do some of the stuff on top of it. He could do CAPTCHA. He already does a bunch of like all the things that Danny has access to doing are things that ultimately impact the user experience, and eventually trying to confuse the bots and doing much more concerted efforts on it over the past week or two became very noticeable to customers.
Yeah, okay, so before he was doing it, they were there for testing purposes.
Yeah, I
right?
mean, he used them for various things, a dummy product in a category. There's weird stuff with how you can sort of set up pages, and he would have to kind of create like a dummy product. But in the past few weeks, we're talking products like candidates, prototypes, things that cost a lot more money showing up. And what would happen is they would show up on in the page of products, and I believe coded so that they show up beneath, like what they call below the fold.
Right.
So you have to scroll down before you can see them. So they're far enough down the page that when you first load the page, not going to be visible. But in order to make that not appear to people, when he scrolls, they were set to hide.
Okay.
So they appear when you load the page and disappear when you start scrolling. Not that that's not something that, again, that you could work around. So I think ultimately this post from Danny and the decision to end, like, it came to a head with trying to combat bots and not really having much control over understanding what bot is what and what's doing what, and just going, I'm going to try and confuse them across the board. It became pretty noticeable to actual customers, and I think that's ultimately kind of what led him to this. Like, if I keep fighting this, the best way to fight it is just make it less useful, I guess. Or I don't know. I don't know that it's going to change anything. Again, we don't know unless we see the numbers, right? See the data that Danny has. The official stance on Vega's bot is still going to run. In fact, Vega, I just read earlier this morning that you're going to up the frequency and start getting much more accurate on how long things are up for. I gotta say, so like that's, if anyone has questions about like the technical stuff or anything out, let's see if there's anything in there. Let's actually just go back here. We'll see if there's anything we want to answer. Grape Kitty says, I know someone was asking Danny why Supergirl was listed on the site for $1 million. Wasn't that a way to identify people using bots? I don't think it's to identify specifically. I think it's to feed bad data to bots, so that they're like, if a bot goes and tries to put that in the cart, then like, let's say there's a bot that's like, find the most expensive thing on the page and try and buy it, and then try and buy it with these fake credit card numbers or something.
Right.
It's to give the bot bad data, and those things are dead ends. Like, they weren't, when we say dummy accounts, it, like, whenever you try to add it to the cart, it would give an error like
dummy products.
Yeah, you already have one of these in your cart, which you don't. So
there would be some message that was some reason that you couldn't buy it, and then when you went back out, it was gone anyway.
So whether it's to confuse specifically, as Vega put in the chat, to confuse notification bots, or whether it was to confuse any bot, I mean,
Danny commented in his thing, he's been running a notification bot for years.
You mean Vega?
No, I thought Danny did.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, maybe it was Vega. Yeah, no, it was Vega's letter. Yeah,
no,
he's been running it for years.
Vega's point was traffic didn't increase, and in fact, he actually recently rewrote the bot to make it more efficient and not poll as frequently.
Mhm.
So, I don't ultimately think that the traffic that our bots individually, at least, would have an impact on Danny's site. What we don't know is how many other people were doing it, what the real traffic he was looking at. And yeah, maybe some of this came from, being challenged repeatedly on the efficacy of the decision and things like that. I mean, I gotta say, it as much as I don't see evidence that Vega's bot was making any impact on the website, the you did have repeated, like, needling at Danny for around the stealth stuff, very vocal about it, and vocal about spreading that, well, everyone may want that, but you're going to provide this service for people, and essentially, bypass. I guess I can see where, like, people would see it as bypassing the will of the community, but because you don't agree with it, and again, in the end, it comes down to, like, these types of bots. It's not like they're criminal or illegal. Using a bot to get notifications for things. So it's hard. It's hard to agree with, with, like, if you're gonna try and blame, like, somebody like Vega for this, don't. But probably calling attention to it was likely to happen. Also, I gotta say, even if Vega didn't advertise it, didn't make it public, the likelihood is enough people would start, like I feel like we don't know what was going to happen. Like, we don't know what 6 months down the line, 6 months of stealth would look like. Would we end up back in a similar place because enough people started running little bots and things like that, or enough people started using a little service, like Vega's, bot on Twitter? It's hard to say. The thing I'm sad about is we didn't get a chance to really see
if it works.
If it really actually works.
I mean, it was obviously doing some good things. Danny was able to stock back up the amount of dolls that he had on the site.
Yep.
Which is great, especially for new customers who have no idea how this whole community works.
Yep.
They can go to the site and see products there that are available. Whereas before, in terms of, like, business representation, people hear about Smart Doll and they go and look and they're like, there's no dolls available. Now there are dolls available. I'm sad. I'm sad for the. I mean, like, I can kind of go either way on the stealth or no stealth, but in terms of community,
but we also a different place. We have too many dolls. First of all, like, we're at a place where, like, we're kind of chill anyway, and we'll go, okay, we'll get them next time.
Yeah.
But if you have limited funds and you have to really pinch to put together the funds to get that doll, and then it pops up when you're not ready for it, or it pops up and it disappears when you are ready for it, and then, like, I get it. Like,
but that's not going to be, regardless of whether you're pinching the money or not. Like, I mean, if that doll is available when you have the money, great. Otherwise, the money stays put aside for that doll when that doll comes available. I don't think that that's really here nor there. Yeah. I think it's just, I'm just sad for the community because the community really seemed to like stealth, and it should have been tried.
Barbary Witch says it's unfortunate that the community has now lost the chance to say how they feel about how stealth drops work. Agreed. we don't have we have some quantitative data of a Twitter poll of it having been up for a short amount of time of having it be running, like a week or two. So it's there it wasn't really given a chance, and you can blame Danny for that. You could blame Vega for that. It's but it's just it's sad. I will say I'm glad for the people that whose anxiety like really got triggered by stealth drops, but I really hope that you can get to a point where you're not having that level of anxiety over like and one's particular doll, because they will come and go. How many retail companies announce every single availability of their products?
They don't.
Yeah. We were living in a world where Danny was responding to the intense demand by over communicating.
I mean, limited editions from things like, for example, because we've been traveling, I have like the currently more popular luggage companies. When they drop a limited edition, I get a text message or something like that. But they're not updating me every day when they restock something, you know.
So it's a little sad. Again, you can argue till the cows come home that like it doesn't, it wouldn't have made a difference, but you can't really know. We can logic it out and say that this doesn't make any sense, but you don't really know. And we're talking about human behavior and changing the behavior of people and how they shop. And there's no way for us to know, like how many purchases are impulse buys that they didn't and wouldn't have purchased if they had been given more time to think about it.
Right.
Now, I do want to call out in the conversation that we had with Peter Vega, pretty good point was brought up. I forget if he brought it up or if somebody else on the Discord brought it up. Danny, in the conversation about FOMO, the live view, there's sort of this like, I don't know, mischievous gladiatorial attitude from Danny about the announcements.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to kind of agree that from Danny's perspective, or the communication from Danny, there may be things ways that he's communicating, like showing the live drops, showing how many people are doing this, doing where, from where, etc. That while is interesting, could also be contributing to the FOMO culture.
Right.
So, maybe that's something for Danny to look at in terms of how do I communicate? Am I contributing to it?
It's the carnival barker.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I got this smart doll here. Hey, come on, everybody, step right up, get the smart doll.
I almost feel like it's like, Danny's sort of looking at it as like, y'all crazy. Like, this is nuts. You're all going crazy for it. I mean, he even does have, like, he calls it Hunger Games versus, that. He does sort of, or has been sort of leaving it up. Like, it's kind of like, I think of this as nuts, but if this is the way you guys really want it, I'll keep doing it this way. And then the stealth happened and people are like, oh, maybe we don't have to be crazy. And then we're back. So, I don't know. I think there is good food for thought here. But
at least poking the bear, I'm just going to say it, poking the bear is not a good idea.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with criticism. But if you spend most of your time online criticizing something that you love, maybe it's time to just move on. Like, maybe there's a toxicity to this relationship that you should, look internally as well. Yeah. Restocks are now again officially available on at Smart Doll. I would actually say, Danny, just automate this. You know, find a way to like make this less work. I mean, maybe he is already, but you know, there should be a way that he can automatically push things out when they launch and not have to deal with like hand doing stuff if he's even doing that.
I'm looking at Kat's comment down here. She says, I low-key love that he's spending weekends working on his garden and tiny home. It's my reminder to touch grass. Like, yeah, things should be simpler than they are.
Yeah, I think that's it. If you have, we'll maybe try and address the any other questions that pop up in chat. But in the meantime, if you're finding this content useful, interesting, informative, entertaining, I don't know, give it a thumbs up.
Get over here more. Thumbs up. And pick one. Let's not forget everybody.
I'll deal with this question immediately. Are we going to have the Smart Doll account in the Twitter feed? I may put it separately though, so people can choose. We'll figure that out. But
so people can choose to follow it or pay attention to it or not.
Yeah. One way or another, it'll get into Discord, and make sure that you guys are aware of it. And you know, and maybe we segregate it out of, instead of being Smart Doll News, the channel is like, you know, Smart Doll Announcements and then Smart Doll Restocks or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Maybe I'll run a poll later. Let the community decide how they want that pushed together. Ooh, or not. Excuse me. In the meantime,
let's party.
We've been driving around, singing songs way too loud because we wanna. Picking up our love friends, fill up the car till it bends because we wanna. Yeah, we just wanna have fun. The trunk's full of wine. We're gonna stay up, have the time of our lives. The night is young, don't need anybody else. We came to party all night long, and we don't need no chaperone. We don't need nobody's attention, yeah, we just wanna dance on our own. We came to party all night long, and sing along to every song. We don't need nobody's attention, don't need nobody else in our zone.
all right. I got asked. No, I think it was a short party this week. And I was paying attention to chat and then looked up and the party was over. And I was like, wait, did it run?
No, we were talking about it.
Yeah. For the most part, it doesn't look like any new big questions have come up. Again, we do our best to have good, respectful conversations about things. We typically try and deal with like the hard stuff in here in the chat. If you want to join a positive, safe community to enjoy your dolls with other doll lovers, check out the Discord. And I think that's it.
That's it. Yeah.
We do. All right. We should have brought this up in the beginning, but to those still hanging out with us, you should probably know that we made a decision today.
We did.
We did.
Oh,
We
that's
did.
right. We sent a confirmation saying that we will be going to DollCon Dallas. We weren't sure we were going to, But as long as they still need us, we will be going to DollCon Dallas.
Thank you, Barbie Witch. Barbie Witch super chat says the Pew Pew Pulitzer Prize, which is, I think, just because of the cadence of that, to me reminds me of Ralph Wiggum's and the Valentine's Day card with the train on it that says "I choose you." So
I have no idea what he's talking about.
Simpsons. She's never been a Simpsons fan. You can write her out of your wills now. So yeah, we are gonna be at DollCon Dallas 2025. We'll talk about it again next week. There's gonna be a news next week, but the week after, Sandy's gonna be flying back from San Francisco.
Well, we haven't decided yet. I mean, technically, you could do the Smart Doll News by yourself.
Well, that's true. Or do it and have her. Well, no, because like you'll be flying back. Yeah, I mean, if you're
technically I'm home at like 4:30, so we'll see what happens.
We'll see, and we can get the rundown maybe from Sandy, or maybe Sandy's willing to go live from the outpost. I don't know.
We'll see.
I'll probably send her with a little bit of gear, little bit of gear,
maybe a little bit of gear.
Just maybe some.
Already got a little bit of stuff to take.
Anyway.
So, anyways, yes.
Zetterl says, "How many days until your trip?"
Flight check-in isn't. We're talking about Japan.
Yeah.
Flight check-in is 23 days.
23 days until Japan. 23 days till maybe by then, Coffee Beyond will be out, and we'll be taking home Coffee Beyond from Japan, possibly. I don't know.
We don't know, but that's who we're waiting on is Coffee Beyond, because John in particular has been wanting Beyond for a long time.
Harvey says, "Oh, more impetus to blow off the con in New York." We've been struggling with we really do want to expand our convention plans next year, but again, money, time off from work, balancing all of that, and we've been going for the past couple of years, so it was like we were really gnashing our teeth on whether to make a break from DollCon Dallas to make room for other stuff, and I'm just not ready to do it yet.
Yeah, and I was actually kind of thinking about the New York con simply because it's on my birthday weekend, and it would be neat to spend the weekend doing doll things and being in New York.
Honestly, the biggest issue is the Doge. The dog and dealing with boarding the dog, Japan is just like
my anxiety over boarding the dog for 2 weeks while we go to Japan is way up here. Yeah. It's constantly on my brain. And yeah, so we have to figure out our trips in terms of not only money, but in terms of what's fair to the dog. Boarding, going away for 4 days, coming home for a week, and then boarding her again is not the best.
Yeah. Hey, I asked you to track down a wig maker. Were you able to?
I don't know if Mel got back to me or not.
So last time we were out in at DollCon Dallas, Mel and Kyle, we mostly only ever get to see at DollCon Dallas. Mel had a wig on a Smart Doll that was handmade cap to fit the doll. And I think it was space buns, Afro puffs, so good. Handmade by an artisan who makes them to fit specific dolls, and I especially if we can find out what it is, we'll be sure to tell you, because just having access to more dolls that really to me, the hair is a big part of representation, and Danny has already talked about the struggles with the twist out wig and effort there.
Speaking of that, Kat, do you know who made that wig? Because I know that you've spent a lot of time talking to Kyle and Mel, and
we'll track it down. We're still working on it and let you know. But yeah. All right. Looking pretty good there. We will talk to you all next week, and I hope you have a good week, and I hope we have some less intense news to discuss next week.
Yes, fun next week. That's all for us, guys. Have a good night. Bye.
See ya.